Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of our podcast featuring educators and students alike from the 50 states of America to voice opinions on current educational policies. Today, we have a super cool guest, which is Miss Kathryn Locke Jones, and she's an educator. And today, she'll be joining us to speak on current educational reforms. So, thank you so much for coming.
Oh my God, Sabrina, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be coming to you like a true educator live from school pickup for my son. So this is awesome.
Thank you so much. Just to begin, would you like to tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Locke Jones, but most of my students call me Miss Lojo. I've taught for almost 13 years in Baltimore City. I teach seventh grade English, and I'm the 2024 Baltimore City Teacher of the Year and the 2025 Maryland State Teacher of the Year.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much again for joining us. It's so cool hearing your story. All right, so for the first question that I was hoping to ask, I was wondering when I first sent you an email, I was sending it to you during the time where the Department of Education was first dismantled. So, to talk a little bit about that, I want to know what were your initial reactions to the dismantling of the Department of Education, and what do you see as the most immediate consequences for public education nationwide due to those reforms?
I think there is something very funny about the dismantling of the Department of Education on my birthday as a teacher. I found that to be like a very poignant moment. Um, but I think one thing to focus on when it comes to the dismantling of the Department of Education is how it impacts teachers on the ground. And teachers are definitely lighthouses for their students. And what I mean by that is like our light is consistent and consecutive no matter the storm. So whether it is the dismantling of the Department of Education or a different policy, the teachers in the classroom that I know are still doing the work that we see every single day. And light can be bended, but it can never be dismantled. And so while I definitely think there are moments of darkness, what I'm most inspired by is the teachers who are committed to still doing the work that they know is what's best for kids.
Absolutely. That's such a great answer. Thank you so much. I was wondering, do you think that there's any immediate consequences from the dismantling that has affected your school district that you've seen so far or would expect to see?
Yeah, I think Baltimore City is a really unique place, and the way that this will trickle out and impact students will be different in states and also in districts. And I think that's like a really important thing. There's a lot of myths about what a district or what a Department of Education has control over and what they don't have control over. And so, with the immediate effects, we're still in a current school year where I think parents are feeling nervous and more confused. And I would say the same thing about students. And then the same thing is about teachers and districts. We're really trying to see like what does that next step look like? And veteran educators will tell you that we're we know the power of a pause and of a power of like continuing to show up in the classroom every single day and waiting to see what the impact actually will be. I think we know that there will be a major one. But we don't want to get to a point where we are extremely worried and nervous without having a plan in place. And so I'm seeing really, really strong educators know what could happen and then being proactive and making sure their kids feel included and that their kids feel safe in their classrooms.
That's definitely so important. Do you think that states are disproportionately affected?
So yes, there are definitely certain states that are disproportionately affected, and a lot of it is based off of the geography in which that their state is operating from. And I think it's interesting to think about like how that translates to what states value. Um, And what I'm really like lucky to have is working in Baltimore and working in Maryland, having a commitment to funding schools. And so Maryland just passed the blueprint for education, and we're really focused on funding our local schools, and making sure that our schools have restorative practices, that our teachers have time to really be experts in their field. And I feel really, really lucky to work in Maryland. And I think that we're doing a lot of things right here.
Absolutely. Do you think that if states are going to be given more of an individualized ability to garner their own state's education, do you think that that would make it so students across the state would have different levels of education?
So I think that's a really great question because it's a myth. Um, like states already have access of their curriculum. And I think there is this idea that the federal government is choosing what books that teachers teach. And one, there are state standards that different states have that are sometimes aligned to national standards. Some states do not have those national standards, but most of them are very true. And then based off of that, the district creates and chooses the curriculum that they want their teachers to teach. And I think there's this idea that states are not involved in that, where states really are involved. The Department of Education is based off of making sure that there's funding across different races, across different types of students that we see. And so the myth around what states are involved in already, I think, is inaccurate.
Thank you so much. That's definitely a great answer and also definitely helped me open my perspective as well. And kind of on that topic of what states already have control of and what the Department of Education filled. In your view, what were the key roles of the Department of Education played that states might now struggle to fulfill independently, or if there's a lack of that and they would continue to be able to thrive without that guidance? Or what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so one thing that I want to make sure we are continuing to have, or creating a space for the voice in that, is making sure that our students who receive special services are making sure they have access to those services, making sure that there's enough school counselors, that there's enough speech language pathologists, making sure that we have IEP goals that are being met. And so that would be something that I would be worried and take pause in wanting to know more about how we're going to support those students. And then the second aspect of that is making sure that we are constantly in education building a bigger table and not a longer fence, or a taller fence. I think people are confused about what an inclusive classroom looks like. And really, what it means is that it's a brave space for students. A safe space is the bare minimum. We want all of our students to feel safe in our schools, but we also want them to feel like their voice matters, no matter who they are. And I think there is a concept of what we want that to be. And the way that I look at it is we want our classrooms, this is an idea from Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop. We want it to be windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. We want our kids to be able to see outside of the world to perspectives that are different than them. We want them to see themselves as mirrors. And then really good classrooms are sliding glass doors where kids can do both based off of what they need.
I love that analogy so much. That's definitely so important is that education opens our perspectives and lets us see the other world and also lets us reflect within ourselves. And also going back to your answer that was about how you're grateful for Maryland being able to play a good part in funding. I was hoping to ask, how is Maryland specifically responding to this shift in education? And if you have noticed any changes in funding, curriculum control, accountability measures since the federal department was dismantled?
Yeah. And Maryland is really great. I feel really honored to have the leadership of Dr. Wright, who's our state superintendent, Dr. S, who's my district superintendent, and then Governor Wes Moore. I think what Maryland is doing is they're investing in the future, and they know that the best way to invest in the future is in our kids. I work at a school in Baltimore City, and we're really focused on restorative practices. And the best part about restorative practices is no matter what school you're in, whether you are in a fully funded private school or you are in a Title I turnaround school, restorative practices works for everyone. And a lot of that is making sure that students are able to process emotions and process things in ways that are healthy. It's not just enough to figure out how you feel or what you feel, but what to do with those feelings. And
Mhm.
so I'm really proud that Maryland is investing in restorative practices and making sure students have access to those really great resources.
Mhm. With Maryland giving access to new resources and also investing in that restorative practice, what advice would you give to other states and what they should implement into their education, especially with having a little bit more independency of their education?
I would invite teachers to the table. So one thing that Maryland does, and other states do it as well, is Maryland has a teacher advisory council where we're able to have FaceTime with our superintendent. I think that really shows like the priority of Dr. Wright, that she values and cares about teachers, classroom teachers, people who are inside their classrooms every single day. And so I think really turning it to teachers. Oftentimes, teachers are not treated as like experts in their field, when in reality, they are, and they know their students better than anyone. I, even as someone that is teaching in Maryland, I could not accurately talk about the challenges of what's going on in Harford County because I'm in Baltimore City. And those are different groups of kids, there's different challenges. And so I really value when we're able to get teachers from across grade levels, across content levels, across districts in a room and really feel like, okay, how can we come together and move forward?
Mhm. Absolutely. I definitely love that analogy of bringing educators' voices to the table. And with that, I was wondering, do you feel that educators' voices are being heard more or less now that federal oversight has been more so removed, as in the Department of Education being dismantled? And who is filling the leadership type of role, and is it effective?
Right. So, as a teacher, I would say that our voices will always be heard because we're really just that type of people. Teachers love to talk, but there is a lot more noise. And so teachers are having to use their teacher voice more often in political and media ways than I think is necessary. It would be great for people to realize, oh, you've been teaching for X amount of years, you have your master's, you're an expert. And oftentimes, and I'll use this as like an analogy, and this is the English teacher in me. I have gone to the doctor many, many times. I have given birth to 4 children. I do not think I could deliver a child. And I do not think that if I am, because I've gone to the doctor's office, I could not do open heart surgery. And I think sometimes people are like, I've been to in school, so I am able to give comments on education. And I wish people would spend more time listening to learn instead of listening to judge, and really giving teachers the mics. Because oftentimes when you give a teacher a mic, you're really giving students the mic. And that's what matters the most.
Absolutely. Also, with that, what risks do you see in terms of curriculum development, especially when it comes to history, science, and civics, now that states have more control?
So I know that states who value making sure that history is honest and accurate will continue to do that. And if there are specific states or people who do not value that, I know that we're in a situation where students will not be able to accurately understand the history of our nation and not be able to be engaged in ways that will make our nation better. One of the best things, I was raised Catholic, and one of the things I really appreciate in my Catholic upbringing was when I was talking to people and they would say the best way to practice faith is to question it. And in the act of questioning faith, you are able to really become a better believer or whatever that means to you. And I think when you think about being an American, the best way that you can be an American is by questioning your country and thinking, what can I do to make this country better? That doesn't mean not acknowledging the pain and hurt that America has done. And it also doesn't mean not acknowledging a lot of the honor and integrity that is seen too. But you have to be active in it. And by not teaching America or history or science or literature from a multicultural lens, from a true lens, from a honest lens, then you get into a point where you're not giving students the tools to be active participants.
Yes, absolutely. On that topic, do you think education should be primarily a state responsibility, or is there still a need for a national body to ensure consistency and fairness, and such as things like keeping our nation up to date on the full multicultural lens of our nation?
Right. I think, again, this goes to like, I always want to build a longer table. And so while states definitely need to be involved in the conversation because they know their students, they know their districts the best, we also need to make sure that we have oversight and making sure that there is a situation where a kid who is learning something in Alabama is getting the same high quality education as someone that is learning something in New York. And on that state, someone in Baltimore is getting the same high quality education as someone in Annapolis. And so I think we want to make sure that your zip code never determines the quality of education that you're getting because we want all of our students to have access to that no matter where they live. Our kids still get to choose where they are born. And we want to make sure that we as a society are providing them with the tools that they can be whatever they want to be.
That's definitely a very admirable statement. On that topic, kind of delving deeper into that, that states are having more discrepancies in the type of education that they're giving. Do you think that that would result in divisions across the nation?
100%. Um, we know that to be true because we've seen it in history. And if we look at history, we have seen when there have been wide discrepancies, we've seen that play out, not just like in immediate, but in short term impact and long term impact. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. Um, and the best way to do it isn't by having a universal curriculum. The best way to do that is by making sure that kids see themselves no matter where they are in the work that they do, and that teachers see themselves and they feel ready and confident. A lot of times we spend conversations on like, sorry, I have to itch my nose. Let me itch it right here.
No worries.
We have conversations about curriculum, and I want to make sure we're having conversations about fully funding our schools before we talk about books. Before we start talking about how many Chromebooks a kid has or, what type of math they're doing, are our kids fed? Are our kids safe? Do they have accurate and healthy facilities? Do they have access to mental health? That stuff needs to be a part of the conversation almost before we start getting into the nitty gritty of curriculum.
Definitely. And the topics of funding too. How do you think those policy changes involving different changes to funding will affect teacher recruitment and retention in the long term, especially in under-resourced districts?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, teaching is one of those professions where you have a 4 year degree, and most teachers end up in getting their master's, and the pay does not equal the work that they want to do, or the work that they do and they deserve. You're so you're a junior, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, very almost a senior, very exciting. So the work that I do outside of school revolves a lot around mental health. My family founded the SL24 Unlock the Light Foundation, which is all focused on suicide prevention and mental health education. And so a lot of the times I'm working with high school kids and college kids outside of my middle school, 8 to 5 p.m. And when I think about that, a lot of kids are interested in fields that allow them to have a really high quality work life balance or work from home or be virtual and have that technology at their fingertips. And so if you think about what other fields have to offer, And then also what other fields pay. It's hard to think about recruiting. But what I know to be true is people who love kids and people who love making magic and serving people, they come into education. And so we should be honoring them by making sure that they are paid a livable wage. Because if
Absolutely.
you do not invest in teachers, you will not be able to invest in students.
Right. On that note, what should parents, students, and communities be paying close attention to right now as the effects of different educational policies begin to unfold?
We should be paying attention to mental health, and we should be paying attention to that's like a buzzword, and I say that in like a way that, and I'll be like vulnerable in this. I lost my brother Sean to suicide in 2018, and he was 23 years old. He was a Division 1 athlete. He was best all around in school. He was like the light of the party, and Sean did not have the words to ask for help. And maybe it was because he was an athlete, or maybe it was because he was a man, or for whatever reason, he didn't have those words. And so I hope that as a society, we can focus on teaching kids to be able to advocate for themselves, whether it's a mental health struggle, whether it's a struggle on an algebra test, whatever it is, giving them the space to be able to have those really brave and courageous conversations. Because sometimes when we think about mental health, people can tighten up and feel like, oh, we're going to talk about something really sad or something really scary. Or then it could go on the other side of being like, oh, well, we need, like, it's just a buzzword. But really, mental health is giving kids the tools to process any emotions, good or bad. It's almost like flossing. Like, it's not just self care and like skin masks. I wish it was. I wish it was bubble baths. But true mental health education is doing the work, the hard and sticky work. And I think schools have a great opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. That definitely makes sense. And thank you so much for sharing your story too.
Oh, of
That
course.
definitely
Thanks
is
for.
something that,
No, go ahead.
oh, yes, I just thank you.
Oh, I was going to say, Sabrina,
Um,
you made it comfortable enough for me to share. So shout out to you for doing
Thank
that.
you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm happy that I was able to offer that space. Kind of continuing on, going on to a little bit after the dismantling of the Department of Education and into some more current events that are more relevant to May 2025, which is kind of, it's interesting to say that so much has changed since just a couple months that I
I
emailed you
know.
back. Yeah, but what I was hoping to ask about, this actually was happening during the time that I was emailing you about, but it's still a little bit relevant to right now as well, of course, with funding always being relevant. But with things such as the Head Start program being defunded and other Title I fundings that help low-income students with gaining access to more equity and access to higher quality materials. What do you think the future of education looks like with these fundings being undercut?
I I never want to get into a situation where I can predict the future because I'm an eternal optimist. But I can say I know that universal pre-K is something that every person benefits from.
Yep.
Kids benefit from it, families benefit from it, teachers benefit from it, society benefits from it. So I'm thinking of something where I'm getting the best return on investment. It's universal pre-K. And that's, I think, something that most people agree with. They want kids to be in an environment where they learn and they feel safe and they feel ready to tackle the next academic adventure. And so I think that is something that most people really do feel passionate about.
Absolutely. That makes sense. And kind of continuing into that funding aspect as well, there's been some more defundings with university research and also for universities in general. And kind of going into higher education, how do you think funding impacts these institutions, whereas it's being taken away from them?
Yeah. We talked a little bit about this before we went live on the podcast, but I was just at Johns Hopkins graduation. I am a Hopkins alum, and in the back of their graduation pamphlet, in the back of the booklet, it said "Research saves lives." And I find that to be like so incredibly poignant during this, where college is creating an opportunity for students to find themselves, to save lives, is the purpose. And what is our next steps to make sure that students feel fully funded as they tackle the next academic adventure that, again, we as a society benefit from.
Mhm. Absolutely. I definitely agree with that for sure. Research definitely drives so much progression and so much innovation in our society. Um, oh wait, also I think it might be cutting out a little bit. Oh wait, okay, hi.
Oh, can
Um,
you hear me? Okay, great.
oh,
Wait, can you hear me?
okay, yes, I can hear you now. Um,
Okay,
okay, so
sorry.
yes, no worries. Thank you so much. Yes, that made it much better. Okay, hold on. Okay. Um, okay, we can just go straight back into it. But for the next question, I want to talk a little bit. I know that you work with seventh graders, so a little bit of the younger kids in the aspect of K through 12 education. But kind of in that regard, PBS Kids, one of the largest television networks that's educational for kids, it deeply services low-income families, and it's super helpful for developing principles like kindness, sharing. It tells you how to count, things like that, that are all helpful in developing our children's education. However, with that, Trump has just launched an initiative that has defunded them, and currently they're facing some difficulties with getting that funding back. But what do you think these implications are with having one of the most largest television networks fostering children's education being defunded? And what do you think those implications are?
Great question. One thing that I was really just moved by is the amount of people sharing their stories around how PBS was so impactful. And kids and adults being so incredibly proud to say that I was a PBS kid and having seen Sesame Street make deals with Netflix. And what I'm hopeful for is that PBS will continue to be able to have funding in ways where they can still have an impact in moments again of darkness or moments where there is uncertainty. I am constantly amazed by the people that are trying to add light to it. And like to quote Mr. Rogers, look for the helpers. And I definitely feel that way, where there a lot of people want to say that it is a dark time in education. And
Mm,
I I feel that weight, but what I am amazed is how many people are coming together to help lift some of that weight. And so I want to make sure that we're acknowledging how how creative people are coming to be and how I'm seeing people invest in education in ways that they maybe weren't a part of the conversation. And I'm happy that they're a part of the conversation because when you have more voices or more perspectives, you're able to kind of value it in ways that are different.
absolutely, for sure. Do you think that there's anything that will negatively impact our communities if PBS is not able to find alternative methods to continue making its impact?
Yeah, I think anytime that you take something away, there's going to be a cause and effect or an impact. And I think I am really interested in learning more about PBS and the work that they do around media. But I also am thinking it from a middle school lens, how important media literacy is and to teach that. And
Mhm.
so I do a project called the National History Day Project, which is a year long research project. And a lot of it is teaching media literacy
Mhm.
skills to students. And so I hope that's something we can continue to invest in.
Mhm. Absolutely. Continuing on more into higher education and leaving the little kids kind of for the last question and going into college students. Again, going back to a little bit of things happening with Harvard. Currently, just yesterday, actually, at 5 o'clock a.m.
I
EST,
know.
yeah. Um, Currently, Trump has launched an initiative that is aiming to bar Harvard from allowing international enrollment at its school. What do you think this means for the future? And also, how do you think this is going to affect Harvard as a community and also as our communities in general in America?
I know I've said this throughout, I always want to build a bigger table. And I always want more perspectives, and I always want um, to make sure that students are feeling included and welcomed.
Mhm,
I think in education, we are not in a situation where we do not want to have those conversations.
mhm,
And one thing that I think Americans have valued for years is being able to have conversations with people that are different than us. I think that is one of our strengths.
mhm,
And as someone who has utilized studied abroad programs and who have had amazing interactions with international students, I know for me personally, I want that for my kids. I want them to be able to learn and work and understand and collaborate and critique and plan and write with students that have different educational experiences from them, not just from where they live, but from who they are. And I think
absolutely.
anytime we get in a situation where we're going to limit ideas, it's a slippery slope.
Mhm.
Um, and especially when we're limiting the people who have those ideas.
Absolutely. What do you think the importance of, I know that you talked a little bit about it in your previous answer, but what do you think the biggest importance international students serve in our communities, especially being some of the brightest minds of the world and being able to study in an American institution like Harvard and contribute to our communities here in America?
Right. I mean, I think that and I'll use like a sports metaphor for this. When you are able to play in a professional league, or you're able to play in the Olympics, or whatever the top of the field is, you get better when you have really amazing competition. You get better when you are able to be challenged, when you challenge others. Teachers will tell you the best and most effective way that kids learns is not from a teacher, it's from their peers. Sometimes a peer is able to teach a concept that I was not able to reach with a certain student. And so that is important when we're thinking about international students and working with students across backgrounds and across ethnicities, across socioeconomic status, is iron sharpens iron. And if I want students to be able to compete globally, then I want them to be able to have a global education. Um, America does not exist in a bubble. And how beautiful is that? That's what makes America so great.
Absolutely, definitely. Kind of continuing on with that discussion as well, especially with, of course, how international students contribute so positively to the community. Another direct impact that they give is actually with their tuition. So, for international students, often they have to pay a greater tuition than most American students, but often that ends up benefiting American students as well, being able to be helped with scholarships and financial aid. So, with them no longer being able to be enrolled and help out with funding for the Harvard School, what do you think this would imply or mean for American students who may be low income or seeking out scholarships attending an Ivy League institution such as Harvard?
I mean, I think you hit it like nail on the head with your question. Um, and this is like what we were talking about with PBS. Like anytime you take away something, there's always a balance that is different. And so time will tell how that will impact, but I always believe that people should have the choice to high quality education. And college is definitely not the answer for everyone. We want to make sure that we are investing in our technical schools and our trades, but we want students to have the choice. And so we want to make sure that students have the option. I never want to get into a situation of we're telling a student who they are before they decide what they want to be.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Definitely. I definitely agree with that as well. It's so important for students to be able to have the choices of the education that they want to pursue, especially whatever situation they're in. That should never act as a barrier for them continuing on with the education that they have earned. So, kind of going into our last set of questions, I always like to end, especially on you said you're an optimist, so kind of an optimist side of you. I know we talked about a lot of complications and issues that are facing education today, but to end on a positive note, which is something that we actually can can be in control in this little scenario, I would like to propose if education was placed in your hands, what would you do? So, if you were to propose a future plan of direction to address the governing of education, what would you do and propose? And what are possible solutions to the educational issues happening right now, such as lack of funding, more of a lack of government oversight on the federal level, and things such as PBS and university education being defunded?
Right. What a question, Sabrina. I love it. The first thing, and I'll just like go in three areas to summarize what we've said. I would invest in teachers and making sure that teachers feel respected and valued and that their voices are heard. The second thing is I would make sure that places are fully funded, no matter the zip code, and making sure that our students are safe, that they are well fed, and that their mental health is being met. And then the third is I would make sure that in conversations around education, we're not just talking to singular people.
Mm.
A lot of times in education, we think about just the teachers. And listen, I'm a teacher, I love it. But what makes a school work is the paraeducators, the
Mm.
custodial staff, the office staff, the admin team. And so it is a microcosm of so many different things and making sure that we are not just making decisions based off of one specific group of people or one specific mindset, that we're really creating an opportunity where people feel valued and loved.
Absolutely. That's a great plan. I would definitely like to see a beautiful educational community such as that one. Continuing to kind of go on, this is more of a message to address our realities. If you had the opportunity to be sitting in a room with all the governmental officials who regulate education-based policies and decision making, what message would you want to say to them, or what would you want them to consider?
Yeah, I would want them to come to my classroom. I think that when people hear um, like what does a culturally responsive classroom looks like, they get really nervous. And so the superpower of my school is we're super diverse in socioeconomic status, in racial status, in gender. And so my invitation is let's come into a classroom. Let's see what that looks like. And I think that is really what matters, where we have people who are making decisions and we want to make sure that they are in the classroom and that they can see it. Um, I will use this from like a Gen Z perspective. Oftentimes, like when I'm doom scrolling, like people just need to like touch grass.
Mm-hmm.
And I will take that to be like people just need to come into a classroom
Mm.
because I think we're getting to a point where it's so far away from the work that teachers are doing every single day that they're losing some of the importance in education. Education cannot happen without human connection, and it cannot happen without fully understanding humanity. And when we are making policies decisions with kids not at the forefront, we get into a place where we lose a lot of heart that matters.
Definitely. That makes sense. I think it is so important that our government officials are involved in education if they're going to be making decisions based in education. I believe it's so important too with any type of decision that you're going to be making in government is that you have a good education of what that type of
Right.
place is. Continuing on, with what types of messages you would relate to the public, almost as a PSA, what messages would you like to tell the students of the future and your fellow educators right now?
What a great thing to end on. I'm trying to think. I wish I had um a like really beautiful catchphrase for this. But instead, I have this thing in my school where we have these we call them the five promises. And we use them every single day. We use them to kind of like ground the work that we do. And the five promises are to contribute to the common good, to produce quality work, to advocate for yourself and others, to persevere, and to have honor and integrity. And those are the rules and the promises that we do every single day. And I would hope that people would see those promises and take those values and kind of move forward with those at heart.
Absolutely. That's definitely a wonderful message to keep on persevering with our students and our educators to keep education moving around. Um, Thank you so much for joining
Cool.
us today. The end off. Thank you so much again for joining me today. I really appreciated having this conversation with you and for you taking the time out of your day to talk about current educational policies. And yeah, just thank you so much for joining.
Of course. Thanks, Sabrina. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.